Okay, everybody, well, we're back for another quick video lecture. We're talking this time about fair regulation. By this, we don't mean like the county fair, although we could, I suppose, but what we're really saying is comparing, different forms of regulation and trying to make, like the regulation maybe appropriate, equal, or in other words fair for different parties involved in certain industries and so forth. So one of the things that we need to do, and I know some of you will just groan, but I can't ever help it. I've got to go back and talk a little bit about history of regulation again. We talked a little bit about this in our earlier comments introducing regulation, but one of the things that we need to talk a little bit about on this, in the early days of, like the Industrial Revolution, certain types of situations started to develop that were basically unfair to the consumer. We had things called like laissez-faire, which is to say, let the buyer beware, okay? Let the buyer beware, okay? And what that meant was, if you bought something, you just out of luck. There were no real warranties or any kind of fitness for use type of warranties of merchantability on products. And then over time, there started to be a call on this because there were a number of cases in the 19th century that involved explosions and different things like that, they were saying somebody needs to regulate this. And so they started to see the need to change the law. And so certain kind of laws, including tort laws, but all the way down to the creation of agencies. We have a number of agencies. We have the Food and Drug Administration, okay. We have transportation. There's quite a few agencies out there, transportation. And a lot of these were like early examples. And that includes the Interstate Commerce Commission, and that's anything that affects, between states or could potentially affect between states. Then there is a need for some kind of federal regulation. So you saw a substantial increase in federal regulation. And so, if we jump forward in time and we talk about, for example, a lot of large companies, Amazon, Walmart, Target, a number of these different companies have an online, division, and that is really hurting the mom and pop. Any kind of big box store comes to town, that's bad. But now with the online purchasing that's going on, and consumers are going into online purchasing in droves, but for a long time there was a protection. There was no sales tax allowed by federal law. So states could not hit any of these people with sales tax. So what's happening is there's a new law going through the Senate right now to try to even this out so that, we're going to change the law to yes, there is a sales tax. And it's interesting, but Amazon is supporting this law, which is really kind of surprising, but on the other hand, I think what they're doing is that they're seeing it as inevitable, and they're seeing it as kind of like the Old West right now. It's just that there's floodgates open, and what they're wanting is some kind of a consistent taxing so that it's always the same, so that they don't get trapped. Well, in New York it's 7%, but in Tennessee it's 10%, but over in Nevada it's 6%. If you see what I'm saying, is there's all these different inconsistencies, makes a lot of work for them. So what they're trying to drive at is, okay, yes, we do need to be have a sales tax, but it's got to be across the board the same, some kind of way that a consistent approach. So the states are getting their money, but the money isn't going to vary from state to state. It's going to be always the same. Now I think some states like Tennessee that have very high sales tax and other states that don't have any sales tax, which I think one of those is like Nevada, there's going to be some issues there because they're going to have to change their laws to kind of be consistent between the states on just how much sales tax that they can collect from these online businesses. So, but you know, that was really killing the mom and pop little hardware stores, mom and pop little toy stores, things like that. You could go online and go to Amazon, buy anything, toys, whatever, and you would not have to pay any tax. One thing though that you did have to pay was shipping, so sometimes it kind of evens out that by the time you add the shipping and the tax, you're just as well to go to the mom and pop place and buy from them because they get a better rate on shipping than you can get maybe from Amazon. So that's one example of the issue of fair regulation, and you know, how is that going to be handled? And so, you know, that's a consideration. So here again, fair regulation. In the past, we had these robber barons like the Rockefellers that were basically soaking up everything. You know, they started out in oil, then they started branching out over into railroads. This was hurting the railroad companies. A lot of the railroads would charge a farmer some exorbitant fee to ship the wheat to the marketplace, whereas some of these big stores, a big company like a Rockefeller, would ship the oil for a lot less money because they were getting that oil clickety-clack. I mean, every day they were getting thousands and thousands of gallons of oil, but they were not getting, they were only getting wheat from Uncle John, you know, like once a year, and you know, and then he's here today and gone tomorrow. So they felt like they had to charge him more money. So that's where the ICC came in, the Interstate Commerce Commission, that said, hey, these rates need to be consistent, you know, to everybody. So that's what we mean when we get into this fair regulation. You know, large companies should not get an advantage of scale over small mom and pop type organizations. And this has consistently been true. You see this when you get into these oligarchies, which are these large, where multiple corporations band together to try to control a market. You know, you can see this in a monopoly where one family is trying to run the whole phone business, you know, like AT&T, we call her Ma Bell, and you know, so they broke up the Bell telephone because it was too unfair to some of these local phone providers. You still have some small towns that have their own phone company. Like I said in one of my posts last week, I live in a town where the city provides our electricity. So, you know, not everybody is dependent on these big monopolies anymore. So it's got to be fair for everybody, whether it's going to be a small company, the government-owned little company, or the large, you know, Duke Energy, or the Rockefellers, or whoever, you know, Standard Oil, whatever. So this is one of the things that you're seeing is if there is going to be regulation, if there is a need for regulation, then it needs to affect all these companies the same. So in other words, some large company gets some kind of an advantage in using the railroads, for example. You know, that shouldn't be done that way because it needs to be fair to everybody, and don't give them a discount because they use the railroads more. So this is just one argument that gets made in these regulation situations. Hope you enjoyed this short video lecture, and you know, jump out there and do your own research, come up with your own opinion, share it with us. We'll be glad to hear what you have to say. Hope you enjoyed this. Like we said, let me know if you need any help with anything. I'm here to help you. That is Rob Dawalt at me.com. Thanks again.